Hey everyone, and welcome to the August edition of 3030. I am your host, Pat Reinhart of Conductor, and as always, thank you so much for spending 30 minutes of your very valuable time with me. We have so much to cover today because so much has been happening over the last 30 days. So, what are we going to be talking about? Number one, we're going to be talking about the high levels of volatility that we've been seeing over the last several weeks. We also heard that the core update rolled out starting today. So we are going to talk about all of that and what's been leading up to it. We're going to talk about user-generated content and do you have a strategy and how you probably should be when you're looking at what's happening in the SERPs right now. Then we're going to talk about, of course, the big news. Google lost their case. They are officially a monopoly. And what does that mean for search? I got this question about 50 times this week. So I'm going to go and talk to it. And then we're going to go through a Newzdash study which came out, which was talking about how Google is sending more discover traffic, but less search traffic to publishers, which is really interesting. So we're going to get into that. But let's jump into it because we only have 30 minutes. Before we get into anything, though, we are doing a raffle today. It's the first for 3030, and I'm really excited about it. As everybody knows, I hope C3 is coming back to New York City as a one-day event on Thursday, October 17th. We are going to be doing a raffle today, so 2 people are going to win 2 free tickets, and you should be seeing a pop-up right in front of you. When you see that, just click to enter the raffle. There it is. Just click enter the raffle, and I will announce the winners at the end of the program. If for some reason we don't have the winners at the end of the program, it will be emailed to you, but I'm really excited to be bringing to be seeing everybody. I love C3. That's where I got my start speaking. That was the first conference I spoke at. Seth gave me the opportunity when I was a customer. So if you've never been, definitely enter the raffle and come hang out with us in New York. I'd love to hang out with you, but let's jump into the other stuff. So next one. High levels of volatility, everyone. And up until today, there were no announcements from Google's, but now, literally about 45 minutes ago, before I had a chance to change the slides, Google actually announced that the August core algorithm update is rolling out. We'll get to that in a second, but let's talk about the volatility that we have been seeing since mid-July, which has been insane, right? So since mid-July, as you can see here, this is SEMrush's sensor, it has been steadily growing. Usually when you see volatility like this, it's up, it's down, the dial's been turning up, the dial's turning down. But from that perspective, when you look at this, you can see that this has just been steadily growing. And we talk about volatility a lot here on the program, right? We always talk about Google's volatility, but the chatter around all this was that, Google's been doing a lot of these creator meetings, right? And what does that mean? That means that they're meeting with people that have been impacted by search algorithm updates unfairly or unjustly, they would say. And especially a lot of feedback around the September helpful content update and everything that's updated since then, right? Because that's when a lot of sites really started to have problems, right? Really, really started to have problems was that, at that September algorithm update, that September helpful content update. And that's where we continue to see these declines. We talk about it monthly, right? So Google, even though at this point they had not, announced a core update yet, we'll get to that in a second. But, as I was saying, I believe that this is all them leading up to the next core algorithm update, which we know is always kind of right around the corner, as John Mueller said last month, is that, there's always a core algorithm update being worked on, cooking. It's all about when it rolls out, right? So will this algorithm update help with sites that were impacted by the September helpful content update? We simply don't know yet, right? Because the announcement that the August 2024 core update only came out today, literally about 45 minutes to an hour ago, whenever it was. John Mueller went out and actually wasn't a tweet like it usually is. I'm sure they've tweeted it out by now, but he put out a blog post about it. Now, why did he do that? Because this one's a little bit different, and it's interesting because typically they just say, hey, this is rolling out. It typically takes, 10 to 14 days, yada, 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 right? But this one, they're actually said, they actually had a couple of lines here. This update is designed to continue our work to improve the quality of our search results by showing more content that people find genuinely useful and less content that feels like it was made just to perform well in search. That's something he says all the time. But if you keep looking into this, and actually, if you go, Barry Schwartz wrote an article about this on Search Engine Land that I read just a little bit ago. like again, like 45, minutes, an hour ago. And he was saying that, John was saying that this is specifically taking feedback into account about the September helpful content update. So that is like straight from the horse's mouth that Google, took feedback about the problems that the helpful content update created for a lot of sites unfairly. And this algorithm update is meant to potentially correct that. So we may finally, after 9 months or so, I think it's 9 months, right? Something like that. Since we've seen those declines from the September helpful content update, we should just, we should be able to see, we'll be able to see some recoveries here, right? So from that perspective, just keep that in mind as this is rolling out. Obviously, there is no analysis on, the algorithm update yet because it literally just started to roll out. I mean, it probably started to roll out about a week ago, but ultimately, I still feel like it makes sense to look at what's happening, around, the last 30 days here, right? So all of the different volatility that we're seeing here is that, so here's a small retailer. As I said last time, I was going to start showing the names of sites that I am looking at, that I track to, from like small retailer to big retailer, things of that nature. So here's a small retailer that I track, wetsuitwarehouse.com. It has remained flat over the last 30 days. I've seen a lot of movement, from a lot of different sites, but this site has always been a good barometer for like every time Google sneezes, this site moves up or down. So this is one that I feel is, is a good kind of, representation of what I'm seeing across all these different, smaller retailers that I look at. And yes, Christy, this is a wetsuit, site. So for everyone that makes fun of me, that I talk about wetsuits all the time, my buddy Chris runs the site, and that's why I talk about it all the time, because I talk to him about it all the time. But from that perspective, that this is a good representation of smaller retailers, that are, they're ranking for about 3,000 to 5,000 keywords, and the type of volatility that we were seeing and the growth that we've been seeing since the helpful content update for sites like this. Now, let's look at a bigger retailer. Let's look at Walmart.com this month, right? Here you can see that their page one visibility has remained flat over the 30 days, which is typical of large retailers as well. So in a change, from the previous episodes, we've always said that, I've always said, that, like larger retailers have been doing worse and smaller retailers have been doing better. But in general, e-commerce has been by far the most volatile, right? By far the most volatile, since, really over the last 2 or 3 years, right? So to see everything starting to kind of plateau at the same time, again, I believe Google probably started to roll this algorithm update out probably a week ago, or they were testing it. So from that perspective, that's something to keep in mind, right? That we're starting to see e-commerce plateau a little bit. Again, like these are just two sites that I cherry picked from a site of a few hundred that I'm tracking. But this is kind of the trend that I'm seeing. Everything's starting to plateau a little bit, and it'll be really interesting next time around. Definitely tune in next month, because it's going to be really interesting to see where all of these sites land, especially e-commerce, to see did the large guys really start to come back up? Did the smaller folks, did they continue to grow, or did they plateau, or did they start to decline? It'll be very, very interesting to see what happens here. So let's look at some financial aggregators. So a couple that I track. Number one is NerdWallet. Continues to see a slow downward trend. Another 1% decrease. In page one visibility, which is fascinating and confusing to me, and all at the same time. NerdWallet has some great content on it. It's a content site. I know it's a financial aggregator as well, but with all the credit card, comparisons and things like that. But it's also a huge content site, and their content strategy is huge in what they do, and has been huge in their success. So I still am confounded by why the helpful content update hurt this site, because they do have high quality content. They do have people that are verified writing it, and so it's really interesting to see. Because I think what Google did, which I've said many times on the program over the last few months, is that the September helpful content update, they turned the dial up a little too much on bigger brands, right? And I would not be surprised to see NerdWallet start heading back in the other direction after this particular update that, literally focuses on the September helpful content update and the feedback that they got from it. So let's keep that in mind as time goes on here. But ultimately, these sites are still struggling. Again, Credit Karma seeing the same thing. Another large financial aggregator, huge content play, huge content, team over there doing good work. But unfortunately, so another 1% decrease over the last 30 days in page one visibility. And you can see here, like, look at this. Look at September. Look at the huge downward trend. It's clear that is the update that hit these guys. And it'll be interesting to see if this does anything, actually does anything to these sites. Next, let's look at bankofamerica.com. So why am I showing another financial site? So typically I'm showing you like aggregators like NerdWallet, Bankrate, things of that nature to show like these big content plays. But something else that I've been seeing, and I've mentioned a couple of times on the program, is that Google seems to be favoring the actual financial institution over the sites that are comparing the credit cards that financial institution supports. So when you look at bankofamerica.com, you see a very different story. Last 30 days, 5% increase over the last 30 days, which, again, as you can see, even though like in September they started to head down, they turned back up in January, February. The March update was good. Like all stuff that happened April, June, and July, everything has been positive for the actual financial institution. If you look at them, Capital One, like TD Bank, like, you can name any bank out there. It seems that Google's been favoring actually showing the brand if someone is searching for a particular credit card or things of that nature, asking to compare credit cards. It looks like Google's looking for the source and not someone that's writing about the source or connected or partnered with the source, which is what a NerdWallet, Credit Karma, Bankrate would be. So to me, this supports my theory, that this is happening. But again, it'll be very interesting to see what happens here in the next couple of, in the next few weeks after this update kind of rolls out and finishes. Because to me, I would be shocked if NerdWallet and Credit Karma continue to be this knocked down. The content on those sites is legitimate. It's very good. I know the people who run those sites. They're very, very clean campaigns. They're doing everything in the right way. So I think that there's room for everyone there. I do think that it's a good thing that the financial institutions are there, but at the same time, I think it's a little unfair to these to the bigger aggregators that they're getting smacked, smacked around because their content, they've invested a lot in content, a lot in good content. And again, it's verified with people, with authors, financial advisors, things like that. So it's really interesting to me. But I guess we'll see what happens here over the next month or so. Let's look at health. WebMD. I've been showing WebMD for a while. They're probably the best kind of barometer of what's happening in health. And as you can see here, WebMD remaining flat, pretty much maintaining its dominance over, health and health-related terms, which is not surprising. Again, we say this every month that, these are the types of sites that we're going to continue to see. Another interesting case, typically I'll show like Healthline or another site, but look at Mayo Clinic here. So it's an interesting case, so over the last 30 days, you're seeing a 3% increase, right, in page one visibility, which is good for a month-to-month increase anyway. But look at the last year. Look from last July to today, right? 370% increase, in page one visibility over the last 12 months, which is crazy, but that shows you that this is the content and these are the organizations that Google wants to show. And this is what you're going to see, right? You're going to see these big names, Mayo Clinic, WebMD, like healthline.com. These are the sites that you're going to see show up for health-related terms. But again, it will be interesting. I don't think that this particular core update is going to hurt these sites. I think it will more than likely continue to help them grow. I don't see WebMD going anywhere, but from that perspective, that is something that we're going to continue to see. And I see a comment in the chat that will go along with the slide in 2 seconds. And here we are actually, so, and then as we talk about Reddit, so see the comment in the chat here, Reddit showing up all over the place, find it annoying. Yep. But from that perspective, Reddit took a little bit of a dip last month, right? So like we talked about from June to July, they were down about 1%. But then from July to August, they actually saw another 5% increase, which when you look over the course of the year, over the last, rolling 12, 13 months, their total growth has grown to 395% in page one visibility, all the way from about, 9.8 million to just about 45 million, keywords on page one. And it's interesting, we've talked about this a lot, so I won't belabor it, but as the comment here in the chat says, Google made a huge deal with Reddit to train Gemini. It's Reddit's getting a lot of money. Google's getting a great place, to learn where people talk about things, conversational, upvotes, downvotes. That's how large language models are trained, upvoting, downvoting. This is good, this is bad, this is better. So from here, this is something that we're going to deal with, right? And it's actually not even just about Reddit, right? It's really not. So great segue into the next slide, which is, I was on LinkedIn the other day, and I hope, if you don't know who Lily Ray is, please go follow her. She's brilliant. And she does a lot of great analyses, right? And she was saying something that I've been talking to a few colleagues about, and also, honestly, I talk about here, right? We talk about here. From here, she made some great points in this post. And when we send out the deck, definitely follow, read the post, read what she was saying. She made a lot of good points here. It's a very long post. But from here, she was saying that it's not just Reddit. We all talk about Reddit, right? But there's a lot of other forums out there that have seen, 90+% increases. Dropbox forum, Howard forums, Home Theater forum, et cetera, et cetera. I won't read the list off to you here, but you can see here that this is a trend. Yes, Reddit is the one that's most in your face because it's the largest, and obviously Google made that huge deal with them. But at the end of the day, this begs the question, this seems to be the direction that Google's heading, right? Like, we're going to continue to see Reddit, we're going to continue to see Quora, we're going to continue to see forums pop up in Google results, right? And that comes back to do you have a user-generated content strategy? And for me, this was something I was right before I read this post, maybe a day or two before. I was talking to a friend about this, and we were going back and forth about people really don't understand the power of user-generated content, but also we understand how hard it is to kind of facilitate that, right? So number one, a question to ask yourself, is producing valuable conversations that, if you have a user-generated content strategy, right? Is it producing valuable conversations, or is it just kind of meh, you know what I mean? You have a community, no one's really in, it's mostly you talking to the wall, and the wall sometimes talks back. But if not, and the other part of this is if it is or if it isn't, is it within your power to maintain and nurture that? Can you manage, can you grow a forum? Do you have a support, portion of your site, which is a big part of companies like Apple and Samsung and things like that. A lot of Apple's organic traffic comes from support.apple.com, not just apple.com. Actually, most of it comes from support.apple.com. So again, these are huge organic plays, and Google seems to be favoring these true, unique conversations. And this really, what this plays into is when you start to see all this happen, is when Google started to talk about the hidden gems thing, right? And that was about this time last year. I think it was June of last year, where Google started to talk about, hey, this is the first time they were talking about the helpful content update. It was before the September launch. And then they were talking about, we're trying to unearth these hidden gems. And from there, this is kind of what you're seeing, right? And they said from comments and forums was one of the prominent points of it. And that's kind of what you're seeing. Now, the argument here is, did they turn the dial too far up? And the answer is arguable, right? You see Reddit everywhere, you see forums everywhere, mainly Reddit, and Quora. Did they turn it too far up? There's arguments. I actually was in a presentation with one of our customers a couple of weeks ago, where I was going through last month 30/30 with them, and we got to Reddit, and I always joke that Reddit's rise is kind of asinine. It's insane because it's just so big for one site. And he had a very interesting counterpoint. It was well, and he goes, and this is the head of digital marketing. He's I actually disagree with you. I think it's a good thing. I think it's a good thing to see these forums where people can get answers. And my counter argument was, but what happens when people just start going to Reddit and stop coming to your site? How does that benefit? And that's the argument, or at least the strong conversation that everyone has. And it was a good back and forth. It was a really healthy back and forth, in my opinion. But from that perspective, user-generated content is clearly very important to Google. And, it's not something that a lot of people do well. It's not something that a lot of people have within their control. But if you do, or if it's something you've been thinking about, I would say that you should consider doing it for your strategy, kind of moving forward, especially if you're planning for next year, which I know a lot of people are going to start doing soon. Like having some form of user-generated content or conversation happening about your brand is probably something that's a need to do and not a nice to do anymore, even though, and that has really evolved quickly over the last 6 months, I would say. If you asked me this 6 months ago, I'd be like, well, you probably got to see what happens with all this, but it's so prominent now. And, graphs like this, you kind of look at it, you're like, yeah, you know what? Like, this is probably something we all really need to pay attention to. So keep that in mind as you're planning for next year. User-generated content, you probably have to think about it. So next topic. So everyone, it happened. Google's officially a monopoly. Bummer for Google. So on Monday, August 5th, Judge Emmett Mehta ruled that Google broke Section 2 of the Sherman Act to maintain a monopoly. Now, before we get into the big question that I've been asked, which is like, what could this mean for search? I think it's important to understand what's at the heart of the actual case, right? Because the thing here is, it's about Google holding an unfair advantage to be the default search engine on smartphones and really smart devices, but mainly smartphones, where more than 2/3 of organic traffic comes from, right? And what do? They pay Apple, they pay Samsung, all of these, like they own Android devices. Like, so all of these things, the default search engine is Google, right? No matter what browser you're using, it typically defaults to Google. That is what is at the heart of this case. It's not that they own all, it's not necessarily about their market share, even though it's all bubbles up to that. It's not that they don't have any competition. Obviously, Bing exists, DuckDuckGo exists, Yahoo exists, other search engines exist, all the AI engines exist now. These are all things that matter, right? Search GPT just came out, which is, like people are talking about, but it's, just kind of like a big AI overview, not really worried about it too much yet. But at the same time, that's what's really at the heart of this case. So from there, the question that I've gotten is what does this mean? Like, what does this mean for search? To me, right now, probably not much, because this is very similar to what happened to Microsoft back in 2000, right, where they were deemed a monopoly. And ultimately what happened is that because of the Windows operating system. And from that perspective, we're sitting here, and what's going to happen is that Google's going to appeal this. They are more than likely going to win that appeal. But what's going to happen is that more regulations will be put into place, which is what happened to Microsoft, right? And again, is Microsoft doing poorly? No. Google is, of course, like all the doom and gloom in the news right now is like, are they going to make them break up, right? They're actually discussing making them sell AdWords, like as a separate business. Like that's how far they're taking it. I do not think that will happen. I simply do not think that will happen. I think what will happen is that more regulations will be put into place. And when you are setting up a smartphone, when it says, hey, what do you want to use? Part of that setup process is going to be, what search engine do you want to use? It'll be Google, it'll be Bing, Yahoo, DuckDuckGo, whatever it'll be, Search GPT, whatever, and that's how, that'll be a new regulation or rule that'll be put into place, which probably won't really impact Google at all, because people are always going to still Google, or use Google rather. So keep in mind here that while this is a big deal for Google, and don't get me wrong, I am not saying that this is not a big deal for Google. This is a bummer for them, obviously. But from that perspective, it's something to keep in mind. That I don't think this is going to impact us really at all, in the short term. But I think from there, it's something that we all just have to keep in mind. So from that perspective, that's my take on this. I don't. A lot of people are worried about this. Don't be worried about this. It's not a big deal. So just give me keep that in mind, right? So last but not least, before we announce, the winners, we're going to talk about this study that came out from Newzdash, right? So Newzdash is run by a gentleman named John Shahada. John was actually a customer of Conductor's for many, many years. He's a super cool dude. He's a nice guy, very smart guy. And he started Newzdash, which really focuses on publishers, right? Because he worked for Condé Nast for a while, so this was his bread and butter. So he had put on, Twitter, X, whatever it's called, that when you look at it, Google's actually sending more Discover traffic to publishers, but less search traffic to publishers, right? So the things that he had said, that the share of traffic from Google Discover jumped from 41.6% to 55.6% of publishers' total Google traffic. That's obviously a 14% increase is really is huge, right? And then from there, traditional web search now accounts for only 36% of publishers' Google traffic, down from 46.5. So again, a hefty amount, right? And then when you think of other search types that lost share, Google News, image, and video search also decreases in their traffic from that as well. So what that means is that Google is leaning on Discover, right? So if you're a publisher, obviously Discover is super important to you, right? So from that perspective, that is so that's something to keep in mind here. But also, this is not surprising, right? Like, is this really surprising to everybody? So I don't think that is. I don't think that that's surprising. So from that perspective, I think if you're a publisher, like, this is going to continue to be a trend, right? Like, search traffic is probably going to decline. Discover traffic will go up. And then in other areas, Google, again, like if like we discussed last month, SparkToro's zero-click search study, they said this, that Google is sending more traffic 30% of the time. Google is sending traffic to their own properties, and that's probably going to continue to increase, which is going to take away from everybody, not just publishers. But publishers, I think they do have a good avenue through Discover to kind of make up for that. So I think it'll be interesting as this goes. But these are huge changes, 14% increases of total traffic, in Discover. That's crazy. But again, like an 11% or about 10% decrease in traditional search traffic. But maybe that's the balance, right? Maybe that's the balance, is that we will see, Discover pick up for what traditional search loses. But I guess only time will tell for that. But if you're a publisher, keep that in mind. That is something that is. But this was a really cool study. Definitely go to Newzdash, and look them up if you're a publisher. John's a super smart guy, and he always does good work. So with that, everybody, we have reached just about the end. We have 2 minutes left, and we are going to announce the winners here, and who's going to get some free tickets to C3. And it's interesting because just about everybody clicked on the raffle, so there was an insane amount of interest. We got some private messages that were like, "Oh my God, can we? I really want this. Anything that I can do?" And since everybody, I say this every month, that I appreciate everybody listening, to me every month coming. We always have a great, huge group here, and from there, we want to say that. Since everyone stayed on this long, since you're all loyal listeners, everybody here is going to get a free C3 ticket. So we're going to give out a code. There's promo code in the chat and link to register. Come definitely say hi to me. I thank you all again for staying with me. But I hope everybody comes to C3 and we can see you there. I hope that you can make it out to New York City. And with that, congratulations to you all. And with that, we talked a lot about algorithms today, but as we all know, the only algorithm that matters is the heart, mind, and soul of your customer. If you keep creating great content that they like and love, they will come back and they will be customers for life. Everybody, unfortunately, 30/30 office hours is canceled this week because I am on vacation starting Monday for the next 2 weeks. So I wish you all an amazing rest of your summer. Thank you all so much for spending 30 minutes of your valuable time with me. I know I say this every time, but this is my favorite part of my job, and I wouldn't be able to do it without all of you. Thank you all so much. Wish my son Jameson luck at his baseball tournament this weekend. We're heading down to Maryland tomorrow, and I hope I get to see you all at C3. Enjoy the free ticket, and we will see you next month. Have a great summer, everyone.